Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a wonderful evening here on the Open Door Show. So welcome to our show. My name is Richard Clapson. I'm here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Ian Child. It's
good evening, everybody.
He moves and everything. It's great to have you here. And just in case this is your first time with us, let me tell you what you have let yourself in for, which is all good. You know, it's all good news. So don't panic, don't worry. Our aim is to give you around 45 minutes of non-stop positivity. This is what this is. This is a positivity zone. And it's all set around the theme of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. So for our sins, Richie and I run a company called propertyCEO. And basically our day job is training people how to become successful small-scale property developers. I think many people like the idea of developing property, but they worry that it might be a bit risky, quite complex and complicated. So our job is to give them the support and the training that they need to do it as safely and as successfully as possible. We also think that right now there's quite an amazing opportunity kind of lying just around the corner in respect to property development. And I think it's going to create a lot of wealth for developers. And what we wanted to do is to help people find out about it and also to see if it might be a good fit for them.
That's right. So, you know, as it is out there at the moment, we've got the pandemic that's still going on. That's keeping us occupied and probably heading into recession. So anyway, look, recessions, they create opportunities. So that's good. But of course, only for those that know how to seek them out right at the start, rather than, you know, waiting and following the crowds and waiting for everything to settle down. So just be aware of that. Now, we're going to be serving up advice, predictions, possibly opinions, guests on this show. So we've got some great guests coming up. We'll talk to you about those at the end of the show today. That makes you stay to the end. Bit of training, I guess, in terms of the answers. But above all, we're going to have some fun doing it. Please put your questions in the chat box as we go through. Enter them in there. If there's no questions, we have no show. So please put questions in there, which will be really good. So we are looking forward to that from our wonderful audience, aren't we, Ian, who always are good to us.
We certainly are. Have you asked them for the customary wave?
No, I haven't, but let's do it now. So can you give me a wave, a hands up, if you can hear and see us? Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, I see your waves.
And good evening to you. So Edward says good evening. Gavin says good evening. Deb says good evening, Richard and Ian. Hope you have enjoyed the lovely weather today. Thought we were late, but phew, we beat you. Yeah, we're having a bit of a chill out time.
Yeah, it's been a great day. I don't know if it's going to last. I have to say, I looked at the weather forecast, looks slightly different tomorrow, but today was a great day for more than one reason. We actually got, we received an anonymous gift.
Did we?
Yeah, with the email said, the thing that came with it said that it was for when you and I are working together after the social distancing is over. They said, Ian, this is for you. What do you think? I think this is a flashback to our first show when I think there was something, a similar message on the screen behind you, and I think the audience seemed to have embraced it.
So they sent you a gift. Well, yeah. That's nice that you sent Ian a gift. Look after Ian. That's fine. I won't bother answering any questions. No questions from me.
You got one as well.
I've got a gift.
It's in the. I put it in the biscuit box to your left, as opposed to the biscuit box to your right.
The empty biscuit box.
The empty biscuit box. There's still an empty biscuit box.
No, you're joking. There's not actually something in there, is there?
Have a look.
Hold on, guys. I've just got to go into the biscuit box. All right. Do you know who sent this in?
I don't. It was anonymous.
I can imagine. I can imagine this is against me.
Superb. I think we've nailed the branding. This could be the whole new look for the show.
I don't know who sent that in, but thanks. It's always nice to receive a gift. Right, that's gone. Throwing that over my shoulder, got rid of that. You lovely, lovely people. Laugh out loud, says Edward. Yeah, very funny. Edward, maybe that was you. I don't know. Someone sent that in. Anyway, good evening to you all. Obviously, you're out there. Ranjit's on, Raj on. Ranjit from Property Investor News, by the way. I don't know if you subscribe to that, but apparently it's a good magazine. So who knows? Property Investor News. Have a look at it. I think sometimes you get a free book with it, not ours, but I think you get a free book, but ours is a cost anyway, so that's cheap. But good evening, Sam. Raj is on, Ranjit's on, Nina's on, Edward's on, Gavin's on, Dill's on, Andrew's on, Chris is on, Clive's on, Paul's on, Michelle's on. I mean, they're all on here. Robert's on, Adir's on, Stephen's on, Claire's on. And who else has just joined? Another Andrew's just joined. Good evening to you all. So welcome to the show. Right, let's dive in. Let's get some questions. Any questions you've got, please put them in the box and we will do our best to answer them. Okay. Let's have a look. We've got a question. Actually, Edward's question straight off the bat. Edward's got a question. Half-acre greenfield site. Can I turn it into a horse livery without planning? I tell you what, Edward, that's the first question I've been totally stumped on. I have absolutely no idea. Next question. Actually, I don't know. By the way, Edward says that Ian sent the T-shirt. Do you know, Edward? You're probably right there. He probably did.
It's a very cynical view you've got there.
Well, I tend to agree with him. That's for sure. So I think here, in terms of horse livery fields, I don't know what that implication is from planning. Whether there is a change of use, I suspect potentially not. But I guess it could be if it's classified as farmland for some reason, it's for agricultural use, and then you've got it as a horse livery. So is that a commercial use? So maybe there's a change there. It's definitely a question to go to a planning consultant, Edward. I'd be tempted to think that it is, but as always, it's looking for loopholes. It's looking for ways round these things to see what you can do. I've never come across that before. I know I've had people that have taken farms and then converted them and put lots of stables and extended the buildings and so on. And of course, you require planning for there. But what are you going to do to the extent of this building or this site? This greenfield site. Are you going to be putting buildings on it? In which case, are they agricultural buildings you can get away without planning? Do these fall under that camp? Interesting one. Edward, I'm afraid I can't answer that directly. I would say the steer on that is definitely speak to a planning consultant, see what they've got to say. He said he wants to put stables on it. I think that's what you're saying, Edward. Yeah, I think the minute you might want to put stables on it, you might well be in for planning. But I'm only guessing there. I mean, I guess that's much more of a development that maybe you're interested in doing than flipping on for a commercial gain, potentially. So yeah, interesting one. But don't know the answer. Ian, have you ever come across that?
No. But as you say, definitely one for the planning consultant. And which is always, if you haven't got one in your team, it's always well worth cultivating those relationships, because these sort of questions come up all the time, and you really want to see if you can cultivate a relationship where a quick phone call will get you a quick answer. And I'll be honest, good planning consultants, worth their weight in gold. So hunt out a good one, and then these sort of questions you can normally ask them via a quick phone call, and they'll happily give you a little bit of time.
Excellent, good stuff. Okay, Ed, if you find anything out on that, please let us know, because it would be great to share that with others. And certainly next time I'm talking to someone, maybe like Colin Smith, I'm sure I'll ask him that. In fact, actually, I've got to be speaking to Colin this week on something else, so maybe I'll chat with him on that one. By the way, just on the T-shirt thing, Deb's put shock horror. Where's the positive in that? Laugh out loud. Yeah, where is the positive in that? And Trish says excellent! Exclamation mark. I'm assuming that's associated with the T-shirt. Okay, let's have a look at another question. Okay. How easy, this is from Nina, how easy is it for first-time developers to get funding if we don't have much experience? Nina asks. Ian, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure. So first-time developers getting funding. Well, we've obviously, some of the previous shows, we've talked a little bit about funding. And a lot of it is about branding as for you as the developer. So if we're thinking just about looking after yourself and the way lenders look at you, then there's a big element about branding. But if we take a little bit of a step back, when it comes to getting finance for development projects, the lenders look at you in a very different way to the way they would do if they were giving you a mortgage for your home. So with a mortgage for your home, it's kind of just you and it's your ability to repay, and obviously it's the valuation of the home. With development finance, for sure, you are a big part of it, and they'll be assessing you in terms of your credibility and ability and experience to be able to control the project, which doesn't necessarily mean you have to have done a project before. Because the other thing they're going to be looking at, two key areas in particular, are the team around you, and that includes obviously the entire professional team, and in particular the contractor. So they'll be looking at the robustness of the contractor. They'll be looking at whether your team has done this sort of project before, the level of expertise. And it kind of brings home one of the big advantages of development, which is, of course, that you don't need to have decades of experience as a developer, because your team already has quite often decades of experience in their individual disciplines, and you're just kind of bringing those things together. So they will definitely look at that. And the other thing that they'll look at is the deal. So you need to make sure that you've done your due diligence on the deal, that you've crunched your numbers, and that you're satisfied that the deal stacks up. But the kind of good news here is that the bank is going to crunch your numbers as well. So they're going to be trying to pull the numbers apart, looking at various kind of what if scenarios. You know, what happens if the contractor goes bust? What happens if there's a change to house prices, dips in the market, and so on? So various different scenarios. And they're only going to lend you money on the basis that it kind of passes those. In fact, it passes both of those tests. So if you think of it in that perspective, what you're doing is actually just part of what the bank is considering. It's you are a very big part of it, but actually it's not your experience in bricklaying that is going to determine whether the walls are straight. It's actually somebody that's been bricklaying for decades. So, and the same thing goes for every member of the team. So I think that's one observation. I think the other one is to look at it is that at the end of the day, developers are the lifeblood for the professional team and also for the investors. So whether that is for commercial lenders or for private investors, basically nobody gets paid any interest unless the developer does what they do. And so if financiers only lent to experienced developers, then obviously the industry would simply die out and all the developers, the experienced developers, died off. So they're always looking for new developers. They always want new blood coming into the industry, because that is, of course, the developers and the income for the future for them. I think the other thing, if we just look very briefly at private investors, you know, there is invariably, when you do projects, you'll be looking to secure some private investment as well. Again, same kind of rules apply, I guess, in that the private investor may be looking at you and thinking, well, you know, this is your first development, etc., etc. But of course, they've got the same level of comfort in terms of the professional team that are actually doing the project. But of course, they're also getting generally a very decent return. You know, we typically work on a kind of 8 to 10% annualized return, which in this day and age is, you know, is a pretty decent return. But as a result, you know, they are obviously expected to be taking a certain element of risk here. And one of those risks is that, yeah, from yourself as a new developer, this is your first project, it's your business's first project. But certainly it isn't, you can certainly get scenarios where, particularly if the bank is a little nervous or anxious or wants to put some, just to get some extra risk mitigation, they can do things such as, you know, increase the interest rate they're charging you. They could reduce the LTV, so you're having to put slightly more in terms of other funds, which gives them a little bit more security. There's a few things that they can tweak for first-time developers, but generally speaking, you know, they are very, very keen to find new developers, because that is their lifeblood of the future. The more it's new business for them. So yeah, they want it to work, but you do need to look credible.
Good stuff, Nina. I hope that's answered your question. There's actually two Ninas on tonight, so you know who you are. So if it's not you, it's the other one. Just noticed that. Edward also actually said, yeah, he said they go back to the stables. He said they sell for good money. I have a bungalow connected to the site. Like it, Edward. Yeah, well, go for it. I mean, again, chat to a really friendly planning consultant that's going to maybe try and find those loopholes. It could be, Edward, that you're going to have to go for a couple of stages, that you might have to transfer into this, or you actually build an agricultural building on there, in theory for agricultural use, which I think you can do reasonably easily. And then maybe X months down the line, if you already own this bit of land or it's connected to you in some way, then maybe you can then transfer it across. You know, there are some certain PD rights under agricultural buildings. So it might be a stage process you've got to go through. So probably worth a real good conversation with planning consultant to see how you go through that. And again, this applies to everyone. Really important. In fact, Debs has actually put a question in. Debs says, does the planning consultant need to be in area? Debs, really good question. No, they don't have to be, but there can be advantages, okay? Now, if you listen to some planning consultants that are nationally based, they will tell you the advantage of them being nationally based is, you know, they get experience across the whole country, they can perhaps have a bigger team, etc., etc. Then there's those local based people which say they know the area, they know the local officers. I think, and sometimes that's an advantage, sometimes it's not, but generally, Debs, as a rule, personally, I would prefer to have a planning consultant that knew the local authority that I was going to work with. So I can think of an example here. There is someone here on this evening who we were having a conversation with just recently about planning officers and planning consultants. Good or bad, I won't say, but actually the planning consultant knew the planning officers and used to be there. Might be playing against them a little bit, but actually at least they know how those folks are operating. They know that actually these planning officers are a little bit difficult. Whoever's on tonight, they probably know which job I'm talking about. There's a certain female person on and she'll go, oh, that's me you're talking about. It is, good evening. And so they know that these people are slightly tricky characters in terms to play with. And of course, the thing is, the more experience they've got in terms of what projects have gone through that authority, that planning officer, that planning group recently, then the more chance it is they know whether that you're going to get your scheme through or not through. I think the other thing then, if you're looking at areas, and it goes back to this whole question of where should I work or shouldn't I work? So we had a conversation today with some students, and one of the students was based on the South Coast and was looking at a project in Blackpool. Nothing wrong with that in principle, and the project might have looked like it stacked up. But forget that. There's a few questions around that. But the real reality is how are you going to handle a project in Blackpool? What's it from South Coast to Blackpool? 4 hours, probably, isn't it? It's a good 4-hour drive. You know, the point then is that if you got that sort of 4-hour drive to go there, should there suddenly be a problem, that becomes an issue. And of course, then should those people not work in your area, not be part of your social capital group, as we often call it, you know, what have they got to lose for not doing a good job or for shafting you? So, you know, if you can work locally with everything, that can work. The key thing, I think, with planning consultants and any consultant to that extent is you've got to get on with them, okay? This is a people business, so it'd be really important in my mind that whoever you choose, Debs, as a planning consultant or an architect or an engineer or a contractor, that you get on with the owners of those businesses. You get to meet the owners, the decision makers, and you know when the proverbial hits the fan, because it will on a job at some point somewhere, you're able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. Now, if they are out of area, you know, are they still in your social circles? So that would be important to me. So you know, if there was a structural engineer, in fact, we've got a structural engineer coming on the show in a few weeks' time. He's based in London. Would I trust him to do a project for me in Leicester? Yeah, I would. I'd trust him to do a project for me in Plymouth because I know him. He knows a lot of people that I know, and he's in some of my social networking circles. So he's not going to do. He's going to do a good job. He's not going to do him any harm in that respect. So I think if someone exists in your social circles, albeit they're further away, and they can give a good argument of why, yes, I can work with that authority, I've worked with that authority, and I know the type of thing you're doing. So like we were talking about with Edward just then in Staples, if they understand that type of process, that's worth its weight in gold. There's no point having a local person who doesn't understand how to get an acre of greenfield site into where Ed wants it, into stables. So, you know, there's a number of things to take into account. So, Debs, in terms of the question, should they be local? Ideally for me, always. But then if the right person is somewhere else, then have a look at it. So hopefully that has answered your question.
You can get some scenarios actually where your local person then is able to leverage contacts elsewhere. I remember when we had Dan Stiles on the show, he was talking about his ability to do projects as a project manager. Do projects nationwide, because whilst the relationship you might have would be with Dan, he was able to effectively recruit PMs working around the country, bring them in and kind of oversee and manage that relationship. So I guess the same rules could potentially apply. I think
that's less important, Ian, interesting enough, less important for a planning consultant, because largely their work can be done remotely. The project manager has to manage the project. And I think the interesting thing of what Ian was saying there is that the project manager can actually on your behalf almost subcontract some of the work out, because project managers in the RICS, they have a code of conduct in the way they work. So again, it's about who's going to let who down. So I think that's really important. Deb's actually put a comment in there. She said, thank you. So Colin Smith is out then. Well, Colin Smith, you know, is further up country. Deb's, for those that don't know, Deb's is on the south coast. Colin's further away. But I guess for me, Debs, first of all, I'd say, do you get on with Colin Smith? Okay, so you have to meet the person, and do you get on with them? Do they have the expertise in what it is you want to do? If they do, then that's another tick in the box. Okay, do they have experience of getting similar projects and deals through in other areas? Yes. Have they got any experience of your local authority? Maybe no. So you know, if I've got several yeses, but then I've got to know, right, you've got to weigh them up, and you've got to make that decision and ask them. The point is, who's buying, who's selling? We have to think about this as developers. And welcome to new people that's on board. Looks like Teresa's joined, Damien's joined. I've just noticed you guys there, so welcome. I didn't know if Pardeep was on earlier, but Pardeep, welcome as well. And guys, if you're new to this, if you're new to us, please just throw questions in the chat box. We're taking any questions you want from the floor. Sorry, just averted because I just see the names coming in. But I think the key thing is you can ask them, Deb, so you can say to your planning consultant, or you can say to your project manager, how are you going to handle it then? Tell me how you're going to run this project. Why should I employ you, Mr. Colin Smith, if you don't work in this area? And why should I employ someone that does work in this area? And then you ask the other people the same, and then ultimately you choose. Deb says, great answer, all angles covered and more. We aim to please. Okay, let's have a look and see what else we have got here. Okay, okay, what would you say were the biggest advantages of property development over doing buy-to-lets? The biggest advantage of property developments over buy-to-lets, asks Paul. Evening, Paul. Ian, do you want to pick that one up? I've just been rabbiting on. Do you want to have a go?
You have been rabbiting on. I noticed that. Hi, Paul. Well, they're clearly different things. Interestingly, I think when people approach property, for the first time, invariably, you know, development sits in almost like the blue corner, and investment and being a landlord sits in the buy-to-let sits in the red corner. They look like different paths. We talked, I think, on a previous session about how you can actually do both, but they are obviously they're both in property, but they're both very different. So I think you definitely can do both. The development basically gives you cash, so it's a great way of kind of supercharging your portfolio growth. But in terms of what the differences are, I guess one of the fairly obvious ones is that you've got no tenants with development. Obviously in buy-to-lets, they are an essential ingredient because they pay your bills. But of course, they're a big responsibility. They can, you know, there's the human factor there. And I think we're seeing at the moment, obviously in the back of lots of things that have been happening recently and are likely to happen in the next few weeks and months, you know, there's going to be some challenging times there in the kind of landlord-tenant relationships potentially. When you're developing stuff, you don't, you know, there's no, your properties don't get trashed, the rent doesn't get behind, you don't have to do there's no boiler breakdowns, no gas safety inspections, no block toilets, hopefully. So you've kind of got, everything's new, there's nothing that's going to break, and you haven't got an ongoing liability. You've got a liability for when you're on site, and a fairly big one, but it's obviously as soon as you've sold the units, you then move on. So there's quite a lot of differences there in terms of the responsibilities that you have whilst, on an ongoing basis. With development, you're generally in a project maybe for 12, 24 months, and then you're out. Obviously, buy-to-let, it's a buy and hold strategy, so you're maintaining those relationships for longer. I think the financial one is probably the biggest one in many respects, of course, because what we're hoping with buy-to-lets is that they increase in value over time. So we get that capital appreciation. The figures historically, allegedly, property has doubled in value every 10 to 12 years or so. No predictor of the future, but the idea is you get that equity gain, and of course you get the income, the rental profit, hopefully, in the intervening period. So you're getting two income streams effectively, or one income stream and one capital growth. But of course, one of the challenges that buy-to-lets have had in since 2016 have been been hit pretty hard by the government in terms of the tax rates. You've got a 3% surcharge in terms of effective stamp duty in terms of buying it. Obviously, Section 24 with regards to the way in which the tapering of the tax relief and so on, and mortgage payments. So we're in a situation now where I think buy-to-let versus small-scale development in particular, because some of the levels of investment that we're talking about there are perhaps broadly similar in terms of the amount of money that one puts into the asset. But we're kind of seeing, I think, the small-scale development now has a bit more of an advantage than it used to, simply because buy-to-lets are not quite the proposition that they used to be. A lot of landlords, obviously, particularly in certain circumstances, have exited the market, are selling their portfolios because, they're just no longer able to make the sort of returns that they used to in the past. So I think that's why we're certainly seeing a lot of landlords that are interested in making that shift. I still think, buying and holding property is still we're all going to need places to live and to work for the foreseeable future. There is a massive shortage, so you've got to say that there's still very much long-term value in buying and holding property. But I think at the moment in particular, it's slightly more challenging versus the development side.
Great stuff, Paul. Hopefully that's answered your question. Debs has given you an answer as well, Paul. And Debs says, read the book. There's an excuse for a lame promotion of the book. But actually, joking aside, is this still at cost price, Ian, on Amazon? It
is, yeah. Right. Is this one of your legendary book plugs?
It is, yeah.
Last on Saturday you didn't do one, and the whole weekend I felt something was missing.
So guys, if you haven't seen this book, Industrial to Residential Conversions, it's at cost at Amazon, so we don't make anything out of it, which is a bit crazy, but there you go. I think a few people on here have read it, so give me hands up if you've actually read this book and you've got this book. Yes, a few. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you don't have time, read Ian's book. Yeah, there's another book, but we're not going to promote that one, but there is another book out as well. But guys, just in terms of the buy-to-lets thing, on a serious note, there is a whole section here which talks about buy-to-lets and landlord developers and the advantages of it. So probably worth indulging a bit of time in that. Thank you, Debs, for enabling us that little link into that promotion there. Okay, let's go back. I've got a question up here. Gavin's put one in. Gavin, good evening to you. Hopefully you're still on. Yes, Gavin is. Let's drop all the hands. Gavin's got a multi-part question, so let's pick these off one at a time. He says, I have a question. No, you don't, Gavin. You have 3 questions dressed up as one question. He snuck them in, but let's see what we can do. Given there could be some market uncertainty in the future, yeah, good point. Would finding a client to build for be a reasonable way of a risk mitigation in terms of downward market values? So I'm going to let's pick up all the questions. I'm reading this at the same time as you listening to this. So basically, Gavin's saying, would it be worth actually finding a client to build for? So a pre-sale, effectively. Second part of the question: how would you find a client to build for? Okay, so how would you find one if it's a good idea? And third part, that's why when you say at the beginning, Gavin, I have a question, you don't, you have several. Third part, would such a client entertain working with a new development company going for their first development? Interesting, interesting. Okay, well, look, I think, first of all, in terms of pre-sale, any time in any marketplace, pre-sales are good. So if you are selling out to someone, whatever it is you're developing, and they've already agreed a price before you started building, clearly that's a massive mitigation of risk. Now, there are quite a lot of people who work in the space of social housing. So they deliver social housing schemes, which are pre-sold. They're building them to specification of the social housing, the unit mixes, or the interior fit outs, and they've already sold them. Now, you won't make as much money out of them, okay? The profitability will be pegged back, but you can probably get away with less profitability, whereas a private commercial development opportunity, and Gavin is one of our students, so he knows this, but for those that don't, you need to have a minimum of 20% profit on gross development value before you can get funding, okay? So you need to have that profitability to get funding in place. On a social housing pre-sold scheme, you're not likely to get that. You might be down 15, you might be a bit less than that, but you're still going to get funding because actually the risk that the funders are looking at is largely gone. Okay, there is a risk that maybe your social housing provider might disappear, but a lot of these outfits are well backed and fairly stable. So, providing you're working with someone that's been around a while, that risk is largely gone. So your risks now are associated with construction costs and delivery. So you're taking out a huge risk of selling it on. So I certainly know a number of developers, that's all they do. They take a smaller profit, but they take more certainty. So definitely a good thing to do. You can also sell, if you're in the high end of the market, if we're talking about residential for the minute, to private individuals. So people will have houses built for them, but you tend to be at the higher end of the market. That market in this time, question mark whether you'd want to be in it. Other types of end users could be commercial operators. So you could develop a building into a gym. You could develop, as Edward was talking earlier, you could develop a site into a stables. And you could find operators that want to come and buy it. So certainly in previous lives for me, we used to develop a huge rollout of hotels. So we take old office buildings, we'd convert them into hotels, but we'd have a franchise set up that these were done under, and they would go off to operators. So it was all packaged up. We knew that they would be delivered on. So you can have a pre-sale in all sorts of sectors. So I think that's definitely a really good thing to do. How would you find a client? Well, you just use a bit of nouns, Gavin, in terms of have a think of write this down tonight. Once you come off of this webinar show, just write down every single operator of a building that you could think of. So it could be a gym, could be a hotel, it could be a cafe, restaurants, question mark with some of these at the moment. But there are a lot of those people out there. The stables that Edward was thinking of, car showrooms. There's all sorts of people out there that take buildings that don't necessarily develop buildings, that just want to come and occupy. Their strategy is not developing buildings. Take, for example, McDonald's. McDonald's do largely develop their own buildings, particularly their new ones. And they have their quite big development teams. But other organizations won't. So you need to find out who they are that would take potentially this building. And your third part of the question there, would such a client entertain working with a new development company going for their first development? This is all about credibility and brand, building up brand. It's really important to have a strong brand, okay? Strong website and the presence. And Gavin knows this because we're training Gavin, but some people won't have thought of this. This might be completely new to some people about having a strong brand. And just give us a hands up if you've never heard people talk about having a strong brand as a developer and having a strong website. Yeah, a couple of you out there, definitely. So, you can see how important this is, because if you've got a strong brand, that gives you credibility, and there's a way you build that, which is important. And so if you do that right, Gavin, and you're able to get the funding, okay, so my point really is if you can convince a funder, you'll convince an end user. So it's all about that credibility and branding. We often talk about, if Richard Branson, bless his little cotton socks at the moment, was going to become a property developer, would you bet against him? No, you probably wouldn't, because you'd assume he's a good business person and he can do it. Now, Gavin, we know, has got some great expertise. So Gavin, applying your expertise, your CV, your track record to a developer, why wouldn't an end user take that product off you if it's where they want it and it's for the price they want it for? And so you just convince them that you can deliver with brand and credibility. Gavin, hopefully that's answered your three-part question, which was presented as a single question. Good evening to Dil. Dil's the party wall guy. He's here. He's promoting himself as well tonight. He says, Gil, the party wall guy. So it's obviously telling you that he does party wall stuff. Just out of interest, actually, Dil, obviously I know Dil, met Dil a few times in London, I think it was, Dil. If anyone here would like us to bring a party wall guy, I don't know who, maybe on as a guest in the future. We've got a good number of guests lined up. Give me a hands up if you want to have a few questions fired at a party wall guy in the future.
Did you know any party wall guys, Rich?
No, I don't know any.
No, I don't want to find one.
Thank you. Lots of hands up, lots of hands coming up. Yeah, so
Dil, you got yourself a job.
Dil, yeah. Dil says happy to do so. Dil, that's great. Look, I'll tell you what, Dil. You've probably got my email. Drop me a message, if not through Facebook tomorrow. Remind me, and we'll line you up for a show in the future. People are saying hands up, yes, definitely. So that's good.
And if it was just a nickname, the party wall guy, and it's about your partying skills, then we'll still have you on. It'll be hugely entertaining anyway. Yeah,
absolutely. So we'll do that in the future. Okay. Okay, look, interesting. A bit of a follow-up question from Michelle. Michelle, good evening to you. We talked about branding. She said you've just talked about branding. Ian, this is a question for Ian. What's the 5 biggest mistakes that you see in people with their property development company branding?
Okay. Okay. The first one is that they don't think about branding. So you mentioned it earlier. They kind of think of branding as just kind of, well, I've got to have a website and I've got to have a business card, and it's actually so much more than that. It's absolutely everything that everybody sees about you and hears about you. So you've got to look in a lot of different places and make sure that you're presenting some good stuff to the world in terms of the message that you're giving people. So I think that's probably one of the bigger ones, is not really understanding, or rather underestimating perhaps, the extent of the challenge. And the reason that's so important is because there's about 10 people you need to speak to. There's 10 people you need to convince in terms of the types of people. So your professional team, private investors, commercial investors, estate agents who are going to be kicking your tires because, are you going to go through with the sale? Are you good for the money? Are you going to complete? And there's about 10 different types of people that you have to convince. But they've all got quite an important, as it says, there's quite a bit attached to it. The estate agent's livelihood is based on whether the deal goes through. The commercial lender is lending you lots of money. The private investor is lending you lots of money. So these are important kind of credibility boxes to tick, and which is why, not surprisingly, they kind of they want to make sure that you've got good values and that everything kind of looks right and looks congruent. Another one, people take forever to come up with the name of the company and the logo, and it takes less than a day to do both of those things. So there's no excuses. Every hour, in fact every minute that you spend designing your logo or choosing a name is a lost opportunity, because you could be spending that time doing something that's going to move you closer to getting your first deal, like looking for one, or building relationships, or whatever. So we want to do it really quickly, and so don't take months to do it. I think people also aim for perfection. They do need to be very good, but they don't need to be perfect. And the same rules apply. It kind of, if we spend half the time trying to do that last 10 or 20%, then again, it's time we're not spending doing stuff that's really going to move us forward. So make sure it looks good, but you don't have to make it look absolutely perfect. What else? How many am I up to? 3.
No, you're banging on a bit.
I'm banging on a bit. People also, for some reason, don't tell everybody what it is that they do. You should tell everybody what it is that you do. And so you'll be absolutely amazed at where opportunities come from, both in terms of the deal opportunities, people that have projects that they might tell you about, but also funding. number of private investment opportunities that arise because people do not go around with a kind of tattoo on their forehead saying, I'm a private investor, ask me about borrowing some money. They keep very quiet about it, and so it's only if you start the conversation, they become aware of what it is that you do, that they then start getting intrigued, and they're then going to have a conversation with you. So make sure you are the protagonist. You're telling everybody what it is that you do. That applies not just to property development, just kind of pretty much covers everything. And linked to that, the fifth one would be elevator pitches. People are generally pretty horrendous at elevator pitches, and it doesn't have to be one that you've got off pat. It's not trying to memorize something. It really is just being able to just practice, talk in the car or the bathroom mirror, or practice with your business partner or your family or whatever, and just almost like role playing, so that you get so comfortable at talking about what you do with enthusiasm, without any pauses, without and it becomes second nature. And that means that whenever anybody asks you that all-important question, which you might not be anticipating, you can instantly recall exactly what you need to say without even thinking about it. It just becomes second nature. And when you've got to that stage, I think that you're able to paint a picture of your business in a few moments. People are generally really impressed by that, and that really takes you a long way. And all it is practice. It is not difficult. There you go. That's fine.
Great question. I like that question, Michelle, because I think that will help a lot of other people out there this evening that's on here. I think that's really good. So thank you for that, and hopefully that's answered your question. Okay, just a couple of other little comments that's popped in, which was quite interesting. There's an opportunity here to shamelessly promote Ian's book, but just joking aside, Chris Phillips says Ian's book is great. He says, I'm enjoying it, getting nuggets and having a chuckle at the same time. Highly recommend it. Well done, Ian.
Thank you, Chris. That's very kind of you.
Thanks, Chris. Makes him happy. That's all he lives for. But that is, again, it's a useful resource for you guys if you haven't got it. Just a couple of quid out there. How much is it on Amazon, Ian? That one?
$10.95.
So we seem to be getting some good feedback on that. People seem to say it helps them. So guys, that could be useful. Just going back, a couple of other comments has come in, picking back up on planning. We were talking earlier. Damien asks, he said, I've heard that it's sometimes better to use an out-of-town planning consultant as they won't be scared of upsetting the local authority planning department, i.e. they are not protecting their local reputation. What do you think? I think that's a load of BS, if I'm honest with Damien. I don't think that stacks up, because I think they're, in this industry, I'm a chartered structural engineer. I've been in this industry a long time as a professional. So what I'm going to say is we are all professionals. That's how generally this industry operates. Yes, we can have spats. Yes, we can fall out. Yes, we can have arguments, but generally they're technical arguments. They're not, if you're professional, they're not emotional. So, if you start calling the planning consultant, a fat so-and-so or whatever, then, or an ugly this or that, that's going to get a tad difficult. But most decent, serious professional planning consultants will argue in a very professional way, okay? If it upsets the department, so be it. But the department shouldn't take it as a personal drive. The planning consultant is just trying to do their job, and in the nicest way, they're trying to exploit the system. They're trying to get the loopholes. But most planning consultants and most professionals in this industry will not go beyond the boundaries of professionalism. And if they do, then I wouldn't want to work with them. So there is always loopholes and ways to do things. But if these people are professional, say, look, I tell you what, I think we can push the boundaries a little bit, or we can do a bit of this, bit of that. But generally, it's all about values. If they think you're developing something which is of value, and just the planning system standing in a way, they'll try and help you, and they try and push those boundaries. So I've never come across a situation where the local planning officer is upset with a planning consultant, and then they've sort of almost been run out of town. Because the thing here is, you just got to look at the logic. You see, to me, that's a load of BS that someone's put together to try and sell you this is why you need to work with us, because we're out of town planning consultants. And I don't agree with that. If again, it goes back to what I said to Debs earlier, the criteria. I think for and against for all of it. But I think here is the planning consultants will get their work from us, from developers, people like you out there. That's where their work's going to come from. The local authority are just a processing department that have to go through. And the big thing on local authority planning, in theory, it is supposed to be unsubjective. It's supposed to follow the rules. Whatever the planning policy is in the area, that's what the rules it is it's supposed to follow. So, okay, they can get a bit emotional, planning officers, and you can have a little bit of a rough ride, but you've got to get through that. So I would say I don't subscribe to that. I would say, again, as I said to Debs, get those rules of why you're going to choose a planning officer. Guys, conscious of time, let me just rattle through a couple of other quick ones so we get these answered. Otherwise, I don't want to miss people out. We're not going to get for everything. I do apologise, but sorry, there's a little statement here from Pardeep. Pardeep, good evening again to you. He says, I'm thinking of having a local and national planning consultant. The national consultant is setting the wider strategy, and the local one will manage the relationship with the council planners. The development will be done in 2, possibly 3 phases. Interesting approach there from Pardeep. He's one of our students who is looking to see how he can pull that together in a slightly different way. Pardeep, the only thing I would say, just be careful that you don't get yourself excessive fees if you don't need to. I'm not sure you need that approach entirely. I want to pick up one last quick question here, so we don't run over too much. Where did I see Ricky put a question in a while ago, and I want to make sure I pick that one up. Just as he did put that in. He says, I'm a construction industry professional, Ricky says. An architect. Excellent, Ricky. He said, what would you say to someone like me that wants to become a developer? How easy is it? Ricky, it's bloody difficult. It is not easy to become a developer. Please, please, please don't ever think this is easy. When you get it right, and whether that's 2 years, 3 years down the road, and you get into a rhythm, you get into a procedure, you get into relationships, Ricky, you're going to be in a position where maybe 1 or 2 days a week, you can earn yourself a 6-figure sum of money, but you're going to take a while to get there. So if you started, Ricky, in theory, on this journey today, okay, well, today's run out, let's say tomorrow, it's going to take you 2 years of hard work. And some of our students will know that, and they'd be, all right, give me a wave if it's hard work, guys. Those are our students. Yeah, they're all waving. Yeah, Clive, Sam, Jess, Trish, yes, thank you, guys. They're all waving. Ricky, it's really hard work, okay? But if you're prepared to put that hard work in, Damien as well, thank you, yes, over the next few years, then the rewards are there. But as a professional, as an architect, you have a massive advantage, and I won't say no, but over some of the people that are on here tonight that are our students, are part of the family here, and they push through without the knowledge and terminology understanding in the industry. So if you are an industry professional, and this is not just for Ricky, you have that great advantage, but it's not easy, it's hard work, but it's entirely possible. I'm going to end it there. If you want to know more, ask us again on another session. Guys, we are over time. We always want to make sure we finished. I know there was a few questions that we didn't answer, so apologies for that. Peter's got one there, Nina's got one in. There's a few others that we haven't answered.
We can carry those forward, couldn't we?
We carry those forward to the next show. So guys, that's it. That's it for this episode of Open Door. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful. Please let us know in the chat box if you've enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you've got any friends, because we don't have any friends, you're our family. You are. You're our family, you're our friends. This is all we have. So if you've got any friends and you'd like to invite them to our family, please, only if you think it's worth it. Don't just invite your mother and your father and your best friend's sister. But please, anyone else that you think would enjoy this show, enjoy this straight, honest, no BS, no fluff, straightforward answers, please invite them to the show. We'd love to have them along. We'd love to grow this community, so that would be good. Now, the next show is on Tuesday evening. You've asked us to bring a lawyer, a property lawyer in, so we have a property lawyer. We have, some people will know him, Paul Sams from Dutton Gregory is coming on Tuesday evening as a guest to take your questions. Absolutely anything to do with property and law, I guess. So
am I doing the next one on my own then on Saturday?
Oh yeah, Saturday. Oh, there's a show on Saturday as well. I forgot. I'm way ahead. I'm way ahead. Oh yeah, Saturday there's a show as well, guys. So we have a show on Saturday.
Yeah, we just thought we'd throw it in there for a change. So is Paul coming to the Saturday one, or is he coming to the Tuesday one?
No, Paul Sams is coming to Tuesday one, so forget that.
Okay.
Edward says, what happens to Saturday? Edward, I forgot. Okay, Saturday show, we have an accountant on. So we should have, all being well, a property accountant on. He is going to confirm tomorrow that he's definitely on Saturday. So he will be on Saturday's show. Paul will be on next Tuesday's show. I know who's coming the Saturday after. I could say that. No, forget that. Forget that.
Well,
guys,
we have got, I have to say, because you guys have asked for and please do continue to ask for the types of guests that you want on. But we've definitely struck a rich theme of guests. So the next few sessions, Rich has been beavering away, having conversations, negotiating hard, and you've got some good people coming up, haven't you? You've done well.
I've got
even if your memory's going a bit, you know.
I know we've got a contractor coming up. You've asked for an architect. We've got an architect coming up. You've asked for a structural engineer. We've got a structural engineer coming up. And of course, we have got. I'm going on here. Edward says that's all clear. Then I'm not sure it is. And Debs has put in the puppies are always listening. Not quite sure what that means, but anyway, we'll leave that one where it is. Also, as a final thing, guys, if you haven't joined our Facebook group, which is Business Owners Creating Wealth Through Property Development, I know a lot of you are. Please search me out on Facebook or Ian and ask for an invite into there. We'd love to get you into there. That's it, guys. That's the end of the show. The next one is Saturday, 10 o'clock. See you there. So, just as a final wrap up, good show, chaps. Thanks, says Clive. Thank you, Clive. What happened to Saturday? Yeah, we got there, but we've done all that. Thank you. Have a great evening, Trish. Cheers, lads, says Edward. Rob says great, enjoyed it. Ricky says fantastic evening. Nina says terrific. That's one of the Ninas. I don't know whether the other Nina wants to say anything. But oh yeah, the other Nina says thank you both. Good to see you again. Good to see you, Nina. Really good show tonight, says Karen. Very sharp. Thank you. I think that's my shirt or dress sense that she was talking about there. So yeah, guys, glad you enjoyed it. We will see you on Saturday.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.